Hello, thank you for joining us today at the Blandon Art Museum. This is another one of our art talks with guest artists that we do during this time of the coronavirus. This is kind of our way again to connect with you, the members, and to kind of present the the next artist that we have exhibiting at the museum. So this will be kind of an ongoing series with each new artist for this year, and we'll probably continue it until into the future, just because we've been getting a lot of great responses from it. So the other note I would like to mention is that the Blandon is open to visitors, so we're open Wednesday through Saturday from 1 to 4. So if you're in the area, please come by and see us and kind of witness the artwork in person. We've got some amazing exhibits going on, not only our permanent collection, but this exhibit that we're going to be talking about today. And then we have another exhibit going up currently on the second floor gallery that we'll be doing here next week. And so, again, check out what we're doing here on Facebook. And also check us out on our website as well, and we'll try to keep you all up to date. And please come visit us very soon. So with that, I'm here today with our guest artist, Kirk Hovenga, who's an Iowa artist. He's from the northeast kind of area of Iowa, and he's got these amazing, exquisite landscape paintings here on display at the Blandon Art Museum. So thank you, Kirk, for being with us today and taking time to have this kind of conversation. So
yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting the show. Beautiful museum, beautiful. Probably the best one I've shown at, and I've shown a lot throughout the state. So
well, good,
gorgeous. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, our pleasure, and thank you for the very nice compliment. We like to hear that. So with that, we'll get right into it. So can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I grew up in Iowa, in Davenport. Went to the University of Iowa, and then traveled around the United States as jobs had kind of moved me around. I ended up back in north central Iowa, back to Dumont, where my grandparents lived, and I used to come back and spend time up here. Loved the community, enjoyed the farming community, the roots there, the connection to the land. Just a beautiful thing. I had lived in a lot of large communities like Fort Lauderdale and Phoenix, and I just had enough of that and came back and really connected to the land, and that's where the show really came from, was that connection.
Okay. And in terms of like schooling and stuff, where did you go to school?
I went to the University of Iowa. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from there.
Okay.
I studied, that's a real traditional school.
Yeah.
And so that kind of goes to these paintings. Really traditional materials, traditional working styles. And so that kind of shows up in those two. I studied under Byron Burford, who was the head professor.
Yep.
After school, I spent a couple years as a studio assistant for him. Great experience, wonderful man, and I'm grateful that I had that experience with him.
Yeah.
Really nice personality, too. So really pleased to have that experience, and very lucky to do that. So that's basically that. And then as I worked around and moved around the country, I sold art supplies and interacted with communities. And there I would go to Manhattan, and we'd have stores there, LA, Chicago, Florida. so I'd move around. I was able to spend time with those communities and build relationships, and painted the whole time, as well wherever I went. Never stopped painting in my life since, I went to school and university.
Yeah.
So, it's in my blood.
Yeah. No, you can definitely tell. I mean, even with your, you talk about the landscapes, and I always say, like, people from Iowa, the landscape is like, has to be in their blood because it's constantly around us. I grew up in Iowa. The work that I do is often reflected the landscape, and so I think that's a very strong connection with people that have grown up, particularly in the country or in a country setting.
Yeah.
It's such a gorgeous area, and you also mentioned, and this has come up actually within conversation with some people that have actually been through the exhibit already and have kind of made some comments on some of your paintings as they kind of relate a little bit to, they have that kind of Grant Wood feel, which I think is kind of that Iowa, University of Iowa influence that kind of is still
Sure.
in the mix there. And you had mentioned your professor,
Byron.
yeah. We actually have one of his works here at the museum as part of our collection, so.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of interesting too, because of course Grant Wood taught there.
Yep.
And so Byron was a student of his.
Okay.
And I always thought that connection was interesting.
Yeah.
Philip Guston too. He was a
Yep, he was there too.
Yeah, he was a student of his too. So that lineage was kind of neat, I thought.
Yeah. How about Stuart Eddy?
That I don't know.
Okay,
That
he
I
was
don't
there
know.
right after Guston. I know that.
Is that right?
Yeah. I only bring it up because we have a Stuart Eddy in the collection. I say it's the closest thing I have to a Guston because there's some Guston influences there, which is kind of amazing.
Guston, I think, is a very interesting guy.
I love Guston.
Yeah, I do too. A guy that can change in midstream from abstract expressionism to like just flipping in midstream.
Yep.
And walking away from success at what he did to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. No, I think that's the power of Guston.
Yeah.
And if you look at his entire lineage, he started off being very representational, and then he moved over into the abstract expression, and then he just got totally just flustered or just something happened, and then he totally abandoned it, and people ridiculed him for it.
Yeah.
And now we're like, this is some of the most powerful stuff that he ever produced. So, no, I think Guston is one of my heroes too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which is surprising because you don't really see much of Guston in your work.
No.
But no, he is a great. So, what made you interested in pursuing art? Is that something that came from your family, or?
I don't know. It was just something I had growing up. I was always interested in drawing, left side thing. I have a brother that he was the exact opposite. He ended up being a doctor and, a real analytical thinker, and so we really took different paths in that. And which is kind of unusual looking back at the way that happened. And even going into art school was just kind of like, I'm not sure what I really want to do. I don't think it was favored or really pushed by my parents. But that's what I decided to do, and I'm really happy that I did. I think there's a certain amount of there's a certain amount of a side of, whether it be like philosophy or religion or dance, theater, writing, art, that all tend to be on that side that kind of doesn't have the weight in society now that things like physics and science and so forth, that is really important, that I think is being missed nowadays. And I think it's really important to be on that side because it addresses a lot of questions that people don't ask. And so I'm a real advocate for that, and I'm really happy that I chose that direction.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
No, I totally, yeah. I always feel it's a missing piece because you listen to business people in terms of what they're looking for in terms of an employee. We'll put it back into the realm that a lot of people understand in terms of employment. And they talk about someone that is a problem solver, someone that can think analytically and abstractly. Someone that isn't afraid to pursue challenges and stuff like that. And I always say that's an artist. That's what an artist does. Every day they step into the studio, they do all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. They're constantly a problem solver. They're looking at things both analytically and abstractly at the same time, and they're always trying to pursue something new all the time. And so I feel an artist is what every business person is looking for, but they may not have, the skills in terms of the math skills or something like that. But I think you're right. I think it's something that's been overlooked, and now we're kind of seeing the effects of that, and hopefully, we can get back on track in terms of providing a very important component, the humanities, along with allowing kids to imagine and have that creative side and be able to think abstractly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where energy comes from in a business. Yep. Let's say that's where, again, I think that innovative thought. You're not going to have real lively businesses without people that think deeply about things and dream. Yep. You're just not going to have that unless we support that side of people, leaders that really feel strongly about that. You're just going to have, dead business, dead world, So, I mean, soapbox, but.
No, I think you nailed it right on the head. I think it's important. I think it's a worthy cause to promote and to pursue. So,
yeah. Not to change the subject, but one of the things that I always felt was important to me since I got back here, just back to the connection to the land and stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think is important to know is that almost all these paintings are done of the land almost within half an hour of my house.
Okay.
I think that's a really important thing. This painting here, 3 Silos, I drive by that almost every day. Mm-hmm. And see it in different ways. Every time I drive by, the light's different, depending on which way you're driving by it, whether it's snow or whether it's, what time of year, if it's going to rain going one direction, coming back the other way. To have that connection is really important to me. Other ones, like the one that you have when you come into the show. Mm-hmm. There, that one has been when I've been on Ragbri with my wife. Okay. Something that's been outdoors and I remember that so vividly that time. I remember the light vividly, and it's almost like a flavor. Mm-hmm. That you see, and so having that connection so close, and again getting back to that, the community I live in is like 600 people. Yeah. And everything is that town is directly related to the land. The lumber yard it doesn't live if there isn't a farmer. Mm-hmm. There. The cafe doesn't live if there's not a farmer. And so again, I think that's what really impressed me when I came back. Yeah. I know I went back a little bit. But.
No, that's fine. You're talking about the silos here and driving by them. I can imagine seeing them in different light throughout the seasons and how that changes. And it's very, at least it makes me think of Monet in his Haystack series, where he would visit the same subject over and over again, you know. And so it's something that connects these to a pre-existing historical situation that an artist is done, but you're exploring it in a whole new reality and time frame and, you know, different country altogether, you know, which is really great. Yeah. And this is something that a lot of people can relate to, you know. Yeah. Traveling across Iowa, you know, these are a significant part of the landscape, you know. Especially these styles, I think, are slowly disappearing from the landscape. They are. Which is a whole nother topic that we can, you know, that can be talked about. But and then, you know, also the other one that you had mentioned too, you know, when I first saw that one, not only the intensity of the light, this kind of high contrast between that bright green and the dark shadows, you know, is very intense. Mm-hmm. But just talking about the landscape itself, and I know that this is on, you know, the eastern side of Iowa, but it made me think of me going to visit my cousin who lives over by Correctionville, which is over on the other side of the state, but it's part of that valley system and rolling hills and all that, and that's very typical of what you would see over there as well. And so I think it's great because, like I said before, I think people can come in here and they can relate very directly to these. Sure. Like I've either been here or been to a place that kind of reminds me of this place, and I think it connects with a part of people's memory, and I think that's what will make this show so amazing and great for people to come and visit. So
I have a lot of people contacting me from different parts of the country that happen to run across my paintings that have been from Iowa, that just say that I've been there. This is where I'm from. Yeah. This is what I remember. And those are probably some of the biggest compliments that I get. Yeah. You know, that's me. That's where I came from. Very, very important.
Well, it's connecting with a piece of their memory, which I think is very great and significant. So, no, I think that's part of their power, you know, not only talking about the landscape that we live in, but the ability to kind of activate different people's memory from all over the world that can connect to places that look similar, you know. So
there's an interesting story about that. I had a lady call me. She's in Arizona, and you know the postcards that you get at different shows, and she called me and she said, this painting, she said, I got a postcard of your works from the show, and she said, I used to own that land. And we talked about it a little bit, and it wasn't her land. Yeah. And that was really a compliment. It was really close to her land, where it actually was. Really? I thought that was actually a really neat compliment. She was really excited about it, and she wasn't really even disappointed that wasn't her land.
Well, at least it's fine. Yeah. Again, it activated a part of her memory, and you know, I think that's one of the powers of the painting, is that it has that ability to do that. Yeah. Now, the other thing that you, and I think you mentioned it within your statement, is you talked a little bit about the light and the power of the light that you hear in Iowa and during certain seasons, the intensity of the light and the color. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I remember Byron Burford once. He related light and color to taste. And he said that taste is oftentimes complex, like when you eat food that's sweet and savory at the same time, or sugar and salt, and they'll blend in a certain way. And a lot of times I think of light that way, that it's kind of a complex thing. And sometimes I look at the land or commit to memory the way light overall looks. And there's a good example right behind you that is, I think that's called Pink Clouds Over Orange Fields. And that one to me is a really good example of a particular time where that light hit me. And it was more of a flavor of light than something that actually was. And I see that all the time when I'm driving. My wife drives a lot because I like to just look out and see what it's like, because it really is specific and different.
Yeah.
And I try to capture that. A lot of times that's the most important thing that I try to accomplish. And you can see that in a lot of different the paintings. That one there with the soy fields, that I think is mostly about the light. It's not about the fields. It's not about the drawing and such. I think the drawing's nice, and I think the composition is really strong. But the happiest thing, or the thing that I think is the most important about that is, it's to me, it's an August day.
Yeah.
It's what the air smells like and feels like, at a particular time of day. I'd say to me that feels like maybe, I don't know, 4 o'clock, maybe 5. And so to me that accomplishes that. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I mean, not all paintings are like that. Some are really, really more photographic in nature. But, when you're talking about light, I think that's really important.
Yeah. And really, just living in Iowa, there are some days, like the intensity of the heat that is reflected in light, like the central one there. I can imagine that's a very intense, possibly hot day that painting was kind of created in, versus some of these other ones, like the one that you were talking about with the soy fields being kind of a more cooler. That one seems to have kind of like a haze, kind of like it was yesterday. It was very hazy out yesterday, especially with the farmers in the fields, and then also to possibly the influence of some of the smoke coming from California, influencing the air quality here. But yeah, and even that little painting, center wall, the kind of blueness of the sky and the greenness of the grass there, and it feels very fresh, spring-like, and so I think
you could almost smell it.
You could, you can, and you can feel it too. You can feel, and again, I think that is mainly from your ability to capture the right light using the right color ranges and all that. And I think again, that's the second level to what makes these paintings so powerful. Is that one, they can activate a person's memory. 2, you have this kind of unique understanding of the power of color and how it affects our emotions, and it can put us into a season, it can put us into a time of day, and that only comes from a great understanding of color,
Yeah,
so
thanks.
I think we've answered a couple of these. We'll just kind of go down here. So would you say that your work typically is meant to say something, or are you just kind of reflecting on your love of the land and your love of the light? Or is there something else that you're trying to communicate?
I think they're pretty straightforward. I've had some comments that by some friends of mine, some artists of mine that have said that they're there's a certain nostalgic feeling there. I mean, you even mentioned like Grant Wood and
Yeah.
so forth. And I've had to reflect on that a little bit. In some ways, I understand that. For one, there's hardly any man-made objects. I mean, you do see it here and here. Again, more stylized, but in the rest of these paintings, there's nothing. No
Yeah.
telephone poles. There's no roads. There's nothing. So I can see that where, you know, it could have been 50 years ago, it could have been 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So I can understand that as being that. I wonder, you know, if we'll be able to see this in this kind of thing 50 years from now or 100 years from now. I think it will still be there. But you know, as I drive around sometimes I think, you know, this land is falling. You see the barns falling, the silos falling. You see new buildings going up, but trees, you see some new trees coming up, but a lot of them going down. A lot of the fields are being tiled, you know, making way to, you know, flatter and flatter ground that's better and better for farming.
Yeah.
That's not a knock on anything. I mean, I get it and I understand, and, you know, I'm not going to stand in the way of anything or think that there's anything negative about that. But as far as that nostalgic, you know, feel of things, I kind of understand where that comment might come into play.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think it's kind of a reflection in terms of like, you know, as you were talking, it kind of made me think of the loss of the family-owned farm. You know, where
Right about
now
that.
it's becoming more corporate and corporate. These organizations just buying up the little farmer, and it's making it really hard for the little farmer to make a living, you know, and everything. And so when you talk, that's kind of what I thought of, you know. And then you maybe can see some of that in here, but I think in general, I mean, I think the paintings are timeless, and I think it's not so much nostalgic, they're just timeless right now, where this image could have been the same image that someone could have seen 50 years ago.
You think?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. It's more of just like they're just timeless, and I think it helps not having those elements of human in there. You know, like telephone poles and, you know, windmills and all that kind of stuff, because that speaks to a new kind of a newer age. You know, even these. I mean, if anything, these are probably the most nostalgic. This is the most nostalgic painting you have, because, like I said, those types of silos are disappearing from the Iowa
yeah,
landscape, and they're
they
being
sure
replaced by, you know, those metal bins or even those big blue bins. And so, if anything, this is your most nostalgic painting in the whole show.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you still see hay bales being done that
Yeah.
way, you know, so.
I had to do the hay bale.
You
You know, every Iowa artist got to throw some hay bale paintings in there, don't they?
Oh, yeah. And if you don't love hay bales, I don't know. Hay bales, when I think of Iowa, I think of hay bales, these kind of, I remember being a kid and staring out the window and driving and seeing, you know, and I call them the fields running, you know, as you're driving by, and you see the change in the way you're looking at the line, and I just always thought of them running along, you know, and so that, and, you know, and cattle. I mean, I think of cows too. Now, but there's some cattle's over.
Did you notice that one in the green painting?
No, I didn't. Is there? Oh yeah, up on the ridge.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
There's this hidden up there.
Yep. There's like two, aren't there?
Yeah,
Like
I think so.
A small little herd.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, like I said, that when I think of Iowa, this is what I think of. And again, it's like, yeah, I've driven by that. I've walked through those, you know, those trees, you know, and I've seen these things. And so I think, for me at least, that's how I'm connecting to them. It's
Yeah.
I'm connecting to bits and pieces of my childhood, visiting either
Mhm.
my cousin or my grandparents, and then also to the just traveling in the car and looking out the window. And this is exactly what you saw as you were driving through the state. So, let's see. I answered that one. So, tell us a little bit more about your creative process, kind of step by step. I mean, in terms of how do you start, and what gets you to the finished product?
Well, there's some small studies over here. I do an awful lot of those. I don't know what the size is, maybe 5 by 2 by 3, something like that. I just do a ton of those, and usually when I end up focusing in on something that I feel compositionally is a real strong thing, then I'll start to work that through. And I'll work some from photographs. I'll mess with the composition from there. I'll do drawings on top of that. And you know, I'd like to say I just do one thing. You know, these here had no reference from photographs. That painting over there had no reference of a photograph. You know, some of these are complete, completely based off photographs. Some of them are combination. So I wish I could tell you, you know, like there's a, I start from here, I go to
Like
here,
a
I
rag
go to
reason,
here, I
yeah.
go to there. I'm pretty free flowing
Okay.
when it comes to that.
So in terms of like, do you work primarily in the studio, or do you do a mixture of out in the field, studio? Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Sure. What I can tell you is I spend a lot of time outdoors.
Okay.
A lot of time. Now, I don't paint outdoors.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people, I know not a lot that do plein air. Just not my style. I just can't do that. When I spend time outdoors, I'll drive a lot. I'll drive back roads, get stuck in ditches, just wherever and whenever, because I just love it. I like going places where people don't go a lot. I like talking to people that I happen to come by, learn about fields that are wildflowers are planted because the government says, you know, this is, you know, we'll pay you to do this, and it's a beautiful thing. And so I do an awful lot of that.
Okay.
I'll take a lot of pictures while I'm doing that. I have an unbelievable reference to those that are sorted by year, by time, by month, by quarter. I mean, and I'll never use them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of a ADD thing that I do. And so I do a lot of that.
Okay.
And it's just a constant thing. As I told you before, as I'm driving around, I'm constantly absorbing the light. I'm framing things in my head. So as far as studio time, I spend a lot of time in the studio. My studio is in my basement. I have color corrected lights. Sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 paintings going at the same time.
Okay.
Most of these paintings, the 24 by 36s, they're usually take a month.
Okay.
So fine brushes, expensive paints. That again comes from university where you do the traditional thing
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
Now, do you do with the more kind of the photographic style painting, I'm going to call them, the more kind of photorealistic? Is there do you work through like Underglaze and you build it up that way, or are you more kind of a direct painter, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm not, I don't glaze
Okay.
too much. I'll occasionally do something if the color is just not quite right. It's not going in the right direction. That's a real difficult thing to do, because once you start changing things, like you don't like a particular shade of blue, you know, if you change that, everything goes off of whack.
Yeah.
So just the slightest change is what's gonna make it. You're better off working in those smaller studies and trying to keep it as close as possible. So I tend not to do that and have a pretty good idea of what the end product is gonna be
Okay.
to begin with. There are some paintings in here that are, you know, fly by the seat of your pants. That painting over there, which you know, that's a complete stand-up mixed paint, slap it on, you know, scrape it out, put it on, kind of thing, and you can tell it.
Yeah.
You know, you
Feels
can
looser,
tell.
looser. Yeah, looser. Yeah.
Definitely so.
And even like this one too, it has that kind of
Same.
looseness to it.
Yeah, you're right. The same kind of thing. Slap the paint on, scrape it out, get to where you're gonna go. This painting too
Okay.
is the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And actually, this one right behind you there, that's kind of a similar kind of thing.
The pink one? The pink
Yeah.
shiny orange field?
Yeah. I would say that's more of a kind of combination.
It feels that way
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite feel the same.
Yeah, but they got that same line running through them.
Yeah.
That's for sure. As opposed to some of these that are really like, you know, planned out, and I mean, I could see what these things are gonna look like, you know, once I start laying paint
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
So,
But I can only imagine like the ones that are more photorealistic, just, I can, you know, I imagine you in the studio just kind of like the tiny little like brush marks, and you're very, I can envision you being very intense with that surface, and just these little tiny marks, and that's how I envisioned you working on those, because they just had that quality of like precision and just kind of this kind of hyper attention to the detail that needs to be done to get those to feel the way they do, you know.
it can be brutal.
I'm sure it could.
It can be brutal.
That's why you wouldn't see me doing that.
Yeah,
I abandoned that long time ago.
yeah.
So in terms of, you know, going back to your process, has that process changed over time, or has this kind of been, have you been within the same kind of creative process since, let's say, your college days?
Oh, it's changed incredible.
Yeah.
A lot. I've gone through a lot of phases, and landscape has not been something that I've done until I came back here. And I couldn't even promise somebody that I'm going to continue.
Yeah.
And right now, I feel during coronavirus, I feel a lot different about land. It's touched me. It's made me feel differently about the land, and just about life in general. You know, when you feel differently about things, that, you know, does something to your spirit, and you're looking at things, life in different ways. And
Yeah.
I think that's affecting everybody
Yeah.
that way. And I've heard other artists talk And I'm sure it's not everybody, but other artists that talk about that, and they start to question a lot of things in their lives because things have changed.
Yeah.
In the past, I've had a lot of different styles, gold leaf stuff, something that I've seen that I've done that's more like a synthetic cubism is what I call it. Still mostly traditional techniques and stuff.
Okay.
But no, I've experienced a lot of different styles. And, you know, when you're talking about, 45 years of painting, of course you're going to go through
Yeah.
through that. You know, I'm not going to be somebody famous that, you know, is built their reputation on this, so I better stay that
Yeah.
way.
But usually that choose artists up, from what I've seen. They get locked in saying, okay, this is who I am, and it leads to destruction in their life because they feel like they only have to do that,
Good Pollock.
Pollock is a perfect example,
10
Rothko
years.
too.
Yeah, Rothko, yeah.
Those are two. It was, and it's fascinating because I just watched the other day, yesterday, Frank Stella documentary. He was talking to another guy, and they were walking through a Hans Hofmann exhibit. And they went to a room, and there was these two different Hans Hofmann paintings. There's one that was very heavy, thick paint, and a Hofmann that I've never seen before. It was very kind of Rothko-esque. It was just stained.
Flatter and stained.
It was just stained. But that was the evolution of Rothko. Why couldn't a Rothko have done that? Because it was very similar, and it had it wasn't such a, kind of a static fields of color. It had that motion in it, but it still related to a Rothko painting. I thought it was a very gorgeous transition. I envisioned just I'm a, and it's good for artists to change over time because I think as you grow as a person, as life changes, as new events happen, you have to change as you kind of grow and learn and understand things differently. And if you don't, you're really kind of denying yourself the opportunity of something greater.
Yeah, to live that way. And
Yeah.
That's what's a little disappointing in the current art scene.
Yeah.
I've been to Art Basel's several times.
Okay.
And, read a lot about the economics and such, and how collecting goes. And, a lot about people that are kind of like famous and our speculation, and that type of thing. And they become known for one thing, and they become hot, and they become there's millions of dollars they end up selling for and stuff. Then all of a sudden they're not hot, and people drop them like flies. And that's unfortunate. There's plenty of other artists out there, established artists, but I'm not sure how much people are gonna, that traditional artist is gonna be able to make that breakthrough again. But I think those artists are more important because they're living out in that world.
Yep.
That they're the ones that attach a spirit to the world, that give people hope that other people can look at and go, well, there's a free spirit. They make me laugh.
Yeah.
They see things in a different way. When I talk to that person, they have a different perspective on life. They're willing to live in a way that's different.
Yeah.
And so they may not be famous, but they show me a different way to live.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I think
That may not be me.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about me, but I've seen those people. I've hung out with them.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of one of my professors had told me, it's and he lived in New York and painted in New York, and he did the New York life and tried to make it as an artist out in New York. And he always told us, he's like, there's more interesting things happening here in the Midwest than there is on the coast right now. Just because they're so locked into becoming known and getting into that market, and they're not letting the art just be what it is.
To live.
Yeah. But he says, in the Midwest, there's a really fantastic art being made. And I'm always a strong component of that. It's like, and I believe that too, where I think there's more interesting things happening in the Midwest than there is on the coast, because the coast are, and I've read an article that talked about, what was it? I did a whole talk on it. There's a whole new, is it zombie, what is it called? Zombie painting, or it's something to do with zombie painting or zombie aesthetics or something like that, where young artists are making art that they know will sell, and that's their end goal, and they're just making these things that are kind of, partially alive but dead kind of things.
Okay.
And that's what I feel like is happening a lot on in New York,
And the coast.
and LA, and
Right.
that. Not to say that there isn't little pockets of interesting things happening, because
Sure.
there is, but they're not getting the press, they're not getting the focus, similar to artists that are creating work in the Midwest, I think. And it's sad, but at the same time, I think, I think that's kind of the freedom of being in the Midwest, is that, our cost of living is lower, and so we're able to do more with what we have, and so,
Well, you get to see that in the job that you have, in the business that you have. I'm sure you see lovely things that come through here. I mean, I've spent time and saw beautiful things here, and doesn't that make you feel good?
it makes me feel amazing.
Yeah.
I love the interaction I have with artists and people, and like I've told people, this is literally like a dream job for me, because I get to do a lot of different things, interact with amazing artwork. I mean, who else gets to come to work and see artwork every day and handle it and move it around and make it look better and talk to people about it? I think it's fantastic,
Yeah, I bet.
And so, yeah, this is, I mean, the Blandon, as small as it is, with the collection that we have here, it's really outstanding. And a lot of people just don't realize what we have here. That's one of my role, is not only to introduce visitors to new artists, but also make a conversation between, let's say, your painting and then another painting or a print or a sculpture that we have in our permanent collection, and have this kind of cross dialogue happening. Be it with, right now we have like Louise Nevelson, the print. What type of conversation can be had between that print and your paintings? It's an interesting kind of conversation to have, and is there one there? I don't know. But when you start to do those things, I think that's what makes artwork that much more interesting, when you have those kind of cross dialogues between things that are drastically different from one another.
Yeah.
So,
I think it gives perspective on things when you look at it that way. I would think that's what would be really interesting in your job. I mean, you see, don't you think when you see artists, or paintings or artwork, you see people? Is that right?
I think so. Especially, well, I will say the people that are honest with themselves, you can see it within the work.
That's interesting.
So the more the artist is honest with themselves, the more powerful the work becomes.
Well, that's really interesting.
Because I've seen other things where they might be really great, but it really doesn't reflect truly who they are. It's kind of this like persona that they put on, and then the persona is reflected in the art versus their true self.
That's really interesting.
And so for me, and I think that's why I'm really attracted to, like folk artists and those what we would consider outside artists and that kind of organization, because they don't know any different in terms of style differences or whatever. They're just trying to produce work that feels honest to them, you know. And that's been a struggle that a lot of different artists have attempted. You know, Picasso pursued it, you know, to have the innocence of a child. You know, Dubuffet, you know, went after it. You know, so there's all these series of artists that, like, you know, they understand and I want to say corruption, but the influence that academic understanding has on how you as an artist produces work. You know, when I taught art appreciation, and one of the things that I always love to do is that there's this study that I'd seen where an art teacher was talking to a group of her elementary students, and the teacher said to her students, "Draw me a bird." And that was the only instructions that she gave. Draw me a bird. And the kids produced all these gorgeous, wonderful renditions of a bird, just all over the place, you know, just weird bodies and just different beaks and just very connected to that person, right? So the next day she comes in, she goes to the board, and she draws kind of a, you know, like a W shape up on the board. And she points to it and she goes, this is how you draw a bird. And then she asked her class, again, draw me a bird. All of them copied her.
Oh.
So in that moment, their individuality just disappeared.
They were squished.
And so I think if you're not careful, that can happen within academics. Like, you're getting so, and I've seen it too, where like certain, you know, when I was in school, certain artists or student artists would align themselves really kind of in line with one of their professors, and so that the work became just a copy of their work, you know. And I was never that student. I was like all over the place. I didn't have any sense of direction or anything. But you know, and that kind of, that, at least in my eyes, that's kind of what I saw in terms of that alignment, and then that loss of who you really are. You're trying to be this other person, you know. And so, and again, I think that can be that is reflected within the work. So the more, you know, when the work has this sense of power and energy to it, it feels like the person's being more honest to who they are. And, you know, with these, I mean, you talk about the love of the land, you talk about your interactions with it. So you're infused, you as a person are so infused right now with the landscape that you live in, you know, that's what gives these energies. They're part of your persona. And I can envision, just from you talking, that next year's paintings will probably be slightly different, you know, and they might already have. I don't know, are you working right now on some new paintings? And how, if you were to compare those new paintings to these paintings, what's the change?
A big one.
Big one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big one, yeah. I mean, they're still there. They're based off of landscape, but there's been some thoughts that I have that I've been kind of developing and thinking, you know, so, you know, I struggle. I even what you're talking about, that I ask that question myself a lot. You know, am I being honest to myself? Even somebody at my age, you know, you walk and you look at these things and you go, how well did I really accomplish that? Am I, you know, one of those guys that puff out their chest and say, I did this? Or do you step back and go, well, am I pushing to try to impress somebody and not being myself?
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about the people that are most honest with themselves, and you can see that, and you can see that them as a person, if that's the criteria, I would say, yeah, I probably nailed that fairly good. But there's this old, there's a thing in Buddhism that says, you build a raft to go across a stream, but you don't carry that raft with you after you've crossed the stream. You let it go. And when you're talking about your schooling, you don't carry that with you. You don't carry those teachers.
Yep.
You've learned those things, those concepts, those ideas, the things about paint and color and so forth, but then you just chuck them and then you start going back to being a child and building upon that
Yep.
and stuff. And so I think a lot of what you said there is really important. And when I'm thinking about those things, are you being honest with yourself? And are you always questioning those things? And it's important to question those throughout your life.
Yeah.
I really think that that's important. Because if you're not questioning those things, I don't know if you're really living as an artist.
Yeah. Well, you're not living, and you're not growing as an artist either.
Sure.
Because, being an artist, I think, is a perpetual question. I mean, that's what gets you into the studio. You're perpetually solving a question, and either that be, how do I produce this? How do I translate this image to this surface, or I'm going in to paint something I've never seen before, or I'm going to make something that that is new and fresh to me. So it's always about not only like creating the question, but then pursuing to answer the question that you'll never really truly answer. That only leads to more questions.
Oh, yeah.
That's the life of an artist.
Yeah, and it's a struggle. I mean, you're jumping into an unknown.
Yeah.
But also that's very freeing. I mean, there's something very beautiful about living in that space. You're living in an unknown.
Yeah.
And to me, I acknowledge that unknown, and there's scary and there's beautiful in that.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to take that on and acknowledge that and just live through it. So, and that's also, when you're out of the studio, you can walk around and smell a leaf or look at something new and fresh. So I love that part.
Yeah. Well, and something else you said reminded me of like a quote that Philip Guston had said about his studio practice, and where he said he would go into the studio and he would what was it? He'd first let his art teachers leave. And so he was talking about the process of like getting to the point of actually being able to make work. And so he said, I'd go in the studio and then I would let my professors leave. And then I'd let my critics leave. And then he says, then I'd let my family leave. And then it says, then I would let myself leave. And that's when I could actually start the work, because he released all these pre-notions and pre-expectations, and he was just able to kind of freely work within his space. And I always keep that in my back pocket. And it's like, okay, if you really want to be in an environment where you want to be strictly who you are, you actually let everything go, and even yourself, you have to kind of like leave outside to be able to produce, and to really be honest when there's, and that they can do, it just becomes really kind of weird, because you're talking about these pieces connecting to a personality, but at the same time, you almost have to let that personality kind of drift on the outer rim to allow the work to kind of be what it needs to be,
Yeah, don't you think?
I think
I
so.
mean, and you asked what I'm working on now, and I'm talking, I'm reflecting about, what's a success for me now, and, about the show, what's a success, and about what I think about what may be not. And that's one thing that I'm doing in the studio that's different as I'm painting now, is I'm consciously trying letting go of myself. I will not just pick up paint, start mixing and throwing it on with a brush. I spend time quiet in the studio, I'll sit there, canvas in front of me, if I don't much think about it, if I just let things go. I let my body go, I relax, spend, maybe half hour, maybe even a little bit longer, and just then get to the point where I just try and let it flow. And it's been working out well.
That's
And I
good.
think that's why when I'm saying things are changing, I think it's because I'm getting more in touch with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It
And
may
do you-
sound kooky, but
No, I don't think it is. And, do you think what's happening now with the coronavirus and everything that's happening, people being locked down or not able to go places and this and that, do you think that's what's influencing you? Or were you at a certain place in time where you were ready to make a change anyway?
I think that I was kind of ready. I almost feel like felt like something was coming on. I think things were changing in society a bit that was making me feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah.
But then this thing hit, and made me question things. It accelerated that a lot.
Yeah.
And so, yes, and I think getting in the studio and relaxing and clearing your head is definitely part of that.
Yeah.
That you need to get away, you need to quit thinking, you need to quit seeing, you need to quit
Yeah.
hearing, and you just,
Turning the noise down a little
Yeah.
bit.
we have plenty of noise.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah?
I think we all could benefit from just turning the noise down.
Yeah.
And just be with our thoughts for a little bit when in total silence. So, and you've mentioned this too. So, what are some of your biggest influences? And it could be people, it could be different paintings, it could be different situations. But who and what are your biggest influences?
I would, right now, one of the influences through my life has been Balthus, believe it or not. He's stuck with me throughout my life because he's got a weird psychology that's attached. He's been kind of an enigma to me. I think, oh gosh, it escapes
Is it
me a little
his
bit.
painting approach or his subject matter that?
It's his subject matter.
Okay.
It's the fact that he was like rich and he could just like do whatever he wanted. And so, what he decided to do is like weird and fascinating.
Yeah.
Duchamp was somebody that I find really amazing, incredible.
Yeah.
As far as, the way he pushed himself on, decided to do whatever he wanted. So I think the common thread in that is, somebody that just had the ability to do whatever they wanted.
Yep.
And what came out of that, I think that's it's pretty important. Boy, there's one guy I really like, and for some reason it's just escaping me now. German, Berlin. He's doing abstract art now, still alive. I know it'll come to me while we talk. Did a lot of painting in Berlin, black and whites that used photographs and screen print images and gosh. Anyhow, I know that will come to me.
Okay.
I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but other influences, I guess I kind of chucked a lot of them. It is your teachers that you've had, but I don't try and paint like anyone anymore. I think you get to the point in your life where you just appreciate other artists. You know, you look at a Matisse and you just don't ever anymore think, well, I would like to do that. You just look at it and you appreciate it for its beauty.
Yeah.
Or Picasso or whoever it may be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, throughout, when you're younger artists,
Yep.
I think that I would look at it and go, I could do that. I could do that. Because I loved it so much and had the skills probably to do it once.
Yep.
But when it comes down to it, for me, I get older and I just go, well, I really love it, but I need it. I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah, that's not me.
That's not me.
Yeah, it's not me. I need to
it's
continue
them.
to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, I've been, lately I've been kind of going through that because, I call myself a painter, but I'm really kind of a mixed media, whatever you want to call.
I didn't know you were an artist.
Yeah, I dabble. I dabble. But I always say, it's like, I want to paint again. And so I'll get I'll stretch a canvas in front of me and then I'm like, I get totally lost. I'm like totally lost in terms of relating to that surface because it's so foreign to me because I've abandoned it for so long, where I'm much more able to just deal with materials and think versus materials and bringing materials together to create something entirely unique. It's very similar to when I was in school and I went through a drawing workshop. And I really struggled at the beginning of the drawing workshop because I was trying to relate drawing to what I was doing as an artist with this mixed media approach. And I struggled for about a week in the workshop. And then I finally got to a point where I was like totally abandoned what I was trying to do and just became something entirely different. And I at that moment, I utterly destroyed what drawing was to me as an artist. And so I don't pick up a pen and paper anymore to draw or sketch. Well, I still doodle and stuff like that. But if I'm going to sit down and do a drawing to me is more like me pinning paper up onto a wall and letting the shadows do what they do, and that's the whole piece. And so, yeah, I think I can totally relate to the ideas. Like you see something that's really gorgeous and you connect to it. And you're like, well, I could probably do that. And then you get to the studio and you get there and you're confronted with it and be like, why do it? Because it's already been done and I want to do what I want to do. And so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're talking to. It's like
Yeah.
your influences are there. And I always talk about it in terms of like your influences become bits and pieces of either your vocabulary, your dictionary, your encyclopedia of what you are as an artist. And that encyclopedia or that dictionary is different artist to artist because what we choose to put in there as our verbs and nouns and adjectives and things are based on what we find interesting, how we interact, the materials that we understand. And so my dictionary is way different than your dictionary in terms of how we create. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind too, that you can have these influences, stash them away, put them in your dictionary, and then
They become part of your tools.
borrow and steal from them however you can. So I think that's a better way of kind of speaking and communicating about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not you're not directly trying to paint like them or create like them, but you're taking what you want and using them.
Yeah, I would say in that way, directly relating that, I don't paint like Matisse, but he was a colorist. When you see his work and the way he worked with color, that he created that atmosphere, he created that light and so forth in a similar way what I try to do.
Yeah.
So, and I always loved his work, so I never really thought about it, but since I like that and I like that work, it's probably eventually what it turned out to be and was an influence.
Well, definitely. I mean, the use of color and how, how he combined color and how you're using color. I mean, there's relatables within that. And so it comes from the intensity, it comes from the pairing of colors together and how those balance each other out. You go from Matisse, you could go to Hans Hoffen and how he uses color. There's this lineage, and they can find their ways into even, images that are based on reality and not so abstract, as well. So, what are some of the most memorable responses you've had related to your work from people?
Well, the one I told you, about the lady that they called up.
Yeah.
That one stuck with me quite a bit. I did a talk at Wartburg, and I had a lot of teachers come to that one, and I felt like I was in a colloquium, or where you set works out and they start to beat you up. And I hadn't been through that in 45 years. And so all of a sudden I was challenged in a lot of ways, and I wasn't ready for that. And so I liked it. I guess that's a memorable experience that I thought was fun. So their reaction to my work, I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And some of it I thought was snooty. Some of which is fine. At least they're being honest.
Yeah.
Some of it was just that's the way they wanted to do it, and that's the way they lived their life towards it. By the way, I think it's really important to be positive. There's so much artwork around that there's little reason to say, I don't like this. I don't understand this. It makes no sense why somebody should do this. This is just baloney. Look, there's artwork all around here, even here. There's some beautiful things. Don't waste your time. My suggestion to anybody, don't waste your time on trying to say, I don't like things. Go find the things that you like. If you don't like my things, just walk out. Yeah. It's not going to hurt my feeling. Go to the next gallery and look for something that you like. Yeah. So, sorry to digress a little bit, but
no, I think you're right on top of it, because I've read articles too where there's I've heard the opposite, where critics are calling for critics to be critics again, where they're saying you need to go out, you need to be very critical and stop pandering to the artist ego. And I can see that side, but that's relating to the art as a market, as this monster thing. Whereas I think your comments are just relating to how we interact with artwork as something that we can appreciate, we can enjoy, or we can choose not to look at and go to the next thing, which surprisingly is, we had a visitor come in here, and she had mixed feelings about some of these pieces, but she absolutely loved your winter paintings that are on this sidewall here.
Which ones didn't she like? I'm just kidding.
I can't remember,
don't tell me.
But I could tell you they absolutely loved the winter paintings.
Oh, that's nice.
The winter streams. Nice. There's something, that just caught their attention in terms of that one, and I think it was this like weird 3D quality that one has that doesn't really exist in some of these other ones. There's something really kind of very powerful about those two.
Yeah, I'm glad she noticed those. They're entirely different, I think. It's really the only snow things that I've ever done. They have a interesting flow to them, as different perspective as they flow down. I really like them too.
Yeah, I love them too.
Yeah.
There's something just strangely powerful about the stream one, without the one without the tree in it. The other one just the stream flowing between these, white snowy drifts, and
Yeah.
it's just, again, it's like this hyper. I describe it as being kind of a hyper photographic image that is also almost surreal in how it's presented. There's this weird surreal quality about it, and I think it's this kind of hyper kind of 3D configuration that existed.
Yeah. That's one that those two, I think, would be almost contrary to what we've talked about, that as far as I see Iowa, because it's so close up in perspective, that, it isn't that broad expanse of land. And I think they're successful too, but they're completely different.
Yeah.
And I would agree with her there. But I think the show in general is kind of like that. People have the ability to gravitate towards different parts of it. Though I think the show holds up in continuity. You can see them as a show. There is slight differences in the styles. But what wouldn't surprise me that people would gravitate towards a particular thing.
Yeah, which is natural to happen, and like when I get an exhibit that comes in, I try to make sure that I have a good kind of mixture, and I always focus on like the pace or the rhythm between artworks and trying to create these moments, and I kind of had mentioned to you how I intermix that long wall with the pieces that seem more photographic than and then contrast with some that are kind of a little bit looser, and I think that creates a nice kind of rhythm between the different kind of qualities within the artwork.
Yeah, I think you did a nice job in hanging that. It's interesting to see how shows are hung, and it's really important how they are. And that wall really hangs well. It does have a flow to it that's really interesting, the way that's put together. The show overall is hung real well.
Well, thank
And by the way, like I said from the onset of this museum is really top notch. And I've shown in a lot of places, Okoboji, University of Iowa, Muscatine, many more. This is a real jewel. Fort Dodge should really be proud of this museum.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, and the sad thing is there's a lot of people that don't even know we're here yet.
Is that right?
Yep. I hear stories about people that, they're the same age as the museum, and they'll come in and be like, this is the first time I've been in here.
Oh, goodness.
And I've lived in Fort Dodge my whole life. And I'm
Oh.
like, well, that's sad, but welcome. Thanks for coming and spending your day with us.
Come on back.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. So what's your best piece of advice what's the best piece of advice that you have been given as an artist, but also along with that, what is some great advice that you can give other artists?
Oh, okay. Well, I just gave it. When I said if you don't like something, go find something that you like.
Yeah.
I got a punch in the nose when I was in college. We went to see the independent gallery. I forget what the guy's name is, but he had an unbelievable collection in a flat in Chicago. Amazing. I mean, floor to ceiling, things were hung, you know. And there's Chicago artists. I didn't know who they were, but beautiful work. And I said to the guy, I just caught him off to the side, and I said to the guy, you know, I see a Pearlstein here. You know, I really like him. He's really the only guy that I see here that I know. And I don't know if I came off as, you know, I don't know, snooty myself. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's what he said to me. He said, you know, there's a lot of things here. Why don't you go find something you like? And so it was a punch in the nose.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. So I guess it stuck with me to the point where I just said that here, that as far as the arts are concerned, there's a million things to enjoy and like. Go find them.
Yeah.
In life, it's the same way. Go find what you like. Have a positive attitude in life. Go find what you like. Don't waste your time in life looking for things that you want to be critical about.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice for anybody in the arts, or I guess anybody in life.
Yeah.
Not that I'm an expert, just because I paint.
No, I think that's really great advice, you know. Pursue something that will make you happy, not something that you think you need to pursue, you know, kind of approach. Especially us with children, that's kind of, you know, at least for me, that's kind of what advice I kind of try to give them. It's like, you know, find something that you're happy doing and do that to the best of your ability, because then you'll be successful.
That's great advice for kids.
Yeah, I try.
That's
So I don't
great
think they'll
advice.
hear it anywhere else, so, but,
Makes them happy. I
Yeah.
bet your kids are happy.
you know, sometimes. When they're not getting what they want, then sometimes they're not so happy. But that's what being a parent's about. You take the good with the bad. But I think your advice is really amazing advice, and I think it's something that, you know, people just need to hear and need to be reminded of,
Yeah.
you know, especially within the arts. I mean, pursue what you enjoy. Pursue what will make you happy. And, you know, for us, we're always telling people to be as creative as possible. And, you know, we try to help within that atmosphere, not only by presenting fantastic exhibits, but also trying to provide learning opportunities, art talks, hands-on activities, and things of that nature. So, with that being said, is there anything else that you would like to talk about in terms of your work? Any paintings that we didn't directly talk about that you'd like to kind of focus on a little bit?
No, I don't think so. I really enjoyed talking to you in this kind of way. That's the one thing that's very hard where I live. 600 people, farming community, and being a long way away from people that experience the arts. Sometimes people have no idea who I am or what I do, and it can be lonely.
Yeah.
So to spend some time with you and talk to you about these things is a real enjoyable treat for me. So
Good.
thanks for the opportunity
Yeah.
to allow me to sit down and talk to you.
Well, that's why I like doing them too, because artists need to talk. Like you know, they need to talk to other people, other artists that kind of understands
Sure.
their pursuit. You know, and I think that leads back to, like, because artists are very interesting people, because one, they like to be in the studio by themselves, working,
Yeah.
but they also love talking, and not only talking with other people, but really they have a need and desire to talk about to people that understand art and the art process and the creative process just in general, because it's totally abstract versus other things, you know. Even with me, you know, my wife is a teacher, and so her reality is different than my reality, you know, in terms of how she understands things, and she's a totally different person than I am. She's very kind of like analytical and you know, a box checker, and I'm kind of just a more spontaneous kind of free spirit and things, and so there's a nice contrast between the two of us. But at the same time, it's difficult to have conversations about the artwork, you know. Because I'm sure that you have the instances where, you know, people in your community where they see your artwork and they're like, oh, that's nice, or that looks, you know, really great.
Yeah.
But they don't really get the, you know, you want them to get to the meat of the you know, the painting and really kind of help you understand it versus just that it's nice or neat, you know.
Yeah. You know, that does bring up one more thing. You know, I think I saw something where the average time somebody spends in front of a painting is 5 seconds. I don't think people will get a lot out of a painting in 5 seconds. A painting is deeper, it's richer. The more you spend time with it, the more you'll understand and feel and get the sense of an artist as a person and think about it and so forth. I had a professor that showed me a Matisse drawing, just a face, you know, like Matisse did. He said, I want you to copy it exactly 25 times. And do you have time for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
25 times, as exactly as you can. So I copied it 25 times, and he looked at him, and I thought I did a pretty good job. And he asked, you know, and I said, yeah, he said, what do you see? And I said, you know, I thought I did a pretty good job. And he goes, go back and do it 5 more times. And so I go back, and I'm doing it kind of exact. And, you know, they're just line drawings, you know, with smudges and stuff. And all of a sudden, I started seeing stuff I had no idea was there. There was volume there, there was shape there was depth there, and I wouldn't have gotten it if I wouldn't have spent time with it. Yeah. So, you know, in any artwork, gravitate towards something that you like and really spend time with it. Like, you know, I'm only thinking about that because you know, people will know I'm an artist. They will take a quick look at things. They may equate me to the rest of who they're around. You know, people go to the Louvre and may spend hours in line to see the Mona Lisa and stand in front of it for 5 seconds and be pushed away, you know, by the rest of the people behind them. Yeah. It's a little sad. And so when you come to a place like this, spend some time. Yeah. It's important.
Yeah. Well, and I always say it's like, you know, find something you like, visit it often, because I guarantee that when you come and visit it again, it'll be different because you're different, and so you're bringing, you know, your changes to view a thing that's kind of static in its nature, but you see it different because you're different, you know. And so I think that goes back to the need for people to slow down and spend some time, not only with like looking at art, but no, you know, I think spend some time with yourself too, and identifying who you are. And I think that's what art does. I think it helps us identify pieces of ourselves, and if we allow it to do that.
Ooh, that's nice.
And I think that's what that is, that slowing down, and, you know, spending time with artwork, because we're spending time with ourselves, really.
That's a nice thought, and I think it's true.
Yeah, yeah. And that's how I approach artwork. Is that, And again, I get to do it.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking how lucky you are to be able to stop and look whenever you want.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So, but with that, we'll draw the conversation to a close, and I'd like to thank you, Kurt, for spending I think over an hour talking with me today, and I know the members will appreciate it, and so if you have time, please come visit us here at the Blandon and check out the exhibit entitled Iowa Land and Sky, and see these magnificent paintings by Kirk Hovenga. Hovenga. Because they're truly outstanding, very powerful, very colorful, very full of this amazing energy that can only be found and seen in the state of Iowa. I really do feel that. These are fantastic paintings. So please come visit us. Again, our hours, we're open to the public Wednesday through Saturday, 1 to 4. These are only temporary hours until we get through this, the coronavirus pandemic. And then hopefully we'll be open longer afterwards. But right now, our hours are Wednesday through Saturday, 1 to 4, here at the Blandon Art Museum, located in Fort Dodge, Iowa. Find us on our website at blandon.org. You can find more information about Kurt there and the exhibit. We'll also put a link to your website as well, so you can find out a little bit more about Kurt and some of his other paintings on our website. But also follow us and friend us on Facebook, because we post a lot of our events and activities that we're doing, and interact with people on our Facebook page. So if you're not a friend, or if you haven't followed us, please do that. And we'll see you very soon here at the Blandon Art Museum. So thank you.